Dr. Gaty, I can sense that your religious beliefs really connect to your personal values, and I kind of love the Saint Elizabeth story because it's really about service and purpose. And even in the some of the recovery space, they always talk about service to others as being a great motivator in terms of like staying in recovery. But when it comes to skepticism in the medical field, where can a parent be directed to as a reputable source for information when it comes to risk benefits? And maybe we can transition to vaccines because I'm kind of curious in this area as a parent and a father of a 3-year-old. I feel like this area is, especially in the last 3 years, has provided a lot more skepticism personally. So I'm curious. You're also a father, that's correct?
Yes, sir.
I'm curious what your thoughts are on this as you approach your practice and how to apply it appropriately.
And can I jump in there too? Because there's some specific questions I was going to ask regarding that, because I don't know how to make sense of the astronomical rise in autism. And right now in the news, Robert Kennedy Jr. has been kind of really outspoken about the possibility that the vaccine schedule, the increase in the number of vaccines, could be implicated in the rise of autism. I have no idea about this.
That's, I think, where the skepticism comes into play.
Right. And that's the thing. I have no expertise in this area at all. And I don't want to speak like I do, but I'm concerned about the numbers.
Yep.
It seems like Robert Kennedy is a good man and has decades in this as a prosecuting attorney and has a lot of science at his disposal. My concern is the reaction from the medical authority, the left in this country, who want to dismiss it and just call you an anti-vaxxer. And that is anti-science to me. Like correlation, I know, does not equal causation, but when we see the increase in the vaccine schedule in the 90s or late 80s, early 90s, and then we see this dramatic rise, and we have parents reporting that my kid was different after this vaccine, then I think these are legitimate questions for a free society to be able to ask and require information from its scientists. So I want to put all that together and give Dr. Gaty.
That's a loaded question with a lot of layers, but do your best.
Yeah, I want to give him the opportunity to kind of reflect on this because he is the pediatrician who is making recommendations.
There's a few things to say. One, I always took the vaccine schedule again on trust. I just believe, I believed my teachers, I believed the guidelines, and I just thought the process, FDA authorization, CDC putting it on the childhood immunization schedule was above board. And then I lived through COVID and I saw it in real time. And I know for a fact that there was something fun. I don't know if it was financial corruption, ideology. It was not in the best interest of children to put the COVID vaccine and boosters on the immunization schedule for babies. That's madness. And then the whole world saw that. And then so understandably, that makes everybody doubt the rest of the schedule. That was in fact one of my main reasons. And a lot of people who aren't really opposed strongly to other vaccines was like, you're going to ruin the credibility of the whole thing by powering this through. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. So then it's like, well, was this the FDA? Was this also corrupt back in like the 70s and 80s when they were putting these other, these more older vaccines on the schedule? I don't know. I asked that question. Dr. Bhattacharya, who's been a great outspoken opponent of the COVID vaccines for children, I asked it to him on his Substack, and he was very generous and kind and took the time to answer it. And his take was that he stands by the other vaccines, that those were based. You can look at, large scale studies in Europe and so on and so forth. I don't know. I get the question a lot. I think the only reasonable thing to do, and I don't know if it will ever be done, would be just to like redo the trials publicly and just with transparency, so we know what's going on there. That would be one thing. The other aspect is that there's a lot in medicine that's very complicated that you just don't know. And to go back to the humility thing, sometimes you just have to say you don't know. I'll give you one example, not related to vaccines, but related to kind of reflux medicine. A lot of babies will have this really painful kind of reflux. And so for a long time, the standard practice was to put them on acid blocker medicine. This is like baby versions of like Pepcid, basically. And it seems logical, like, block the acid, the baby seemed, in less pain, makes sense. And then like, we still don't understand a lot, but more and more research lately is emerging about this like gut microbiome and how if you change, like in a baby, the acid levels, different bacteria will grow in their tummies. And then this actually affects the brain and wellness. And so like decades down the road, maybe or maybe not, it's kind of an early field of research, you may be more prone to like psychiatric problems and or to like obesity or things. And so how could anybody have known that? There's like no reasonable way to have known that because we didn't even know this gut microbiome existed. And so you just have to approach it with humility. My issue with the pro-vaccine side, maybe there's a better spokesman lately, but whenever it's hard to watch these debates. I mentioned Ali Bestaki earlier. She did a fantastic one. This was a couple of years ago where I think it was RFK Jr. himself was on her show. And then she had after him a pro-vaccine advocate. And they're just arrogant and obnoxious. And they shut down debate. And so maybe they're right. I can understand being so frustrated where you're right and you're just tired of all these annoying parents and skeptics always asking you questions, but they need to change their approach. They need to have some humility. They need to be willing to open up their files and maybe be more transparent about stuff, because otherwise, I'm just sorry, even if they're right, nobody's going to trust them.